We all know that men and women often approach projects and tasks and initiatives differently, with a different lens, with a different way of problem solving, with a different approach. I've personally noticed this a lot more as I've been forced to take a step back during my Achilles tendon recovery journey. I have to stay seated a lot of the time. So my husband's having to do way more than he would normally have to do. A lot of the tasks that I'm normally in charge of, he is now doing. And it's just interesting to observe and see the differences in approach, even the basic, simple things. Welcome to the Career Changemaker podcast, where we focus on owning your career journey and making impact through the work that you do. Whether you're looking to pivot, transition into leadership, or reimagine your career completely, this podcast is for you. We'll unpack career development strategies, leadership insights, and the mindset shifts needed to thrive in your career. Being a career changemaker means taking control and shaping your professional path with intention. I'm your host, lawyer turned career and leadership development specialist, Janine Esbrand. So if you're ready for candid conversations that are going to help you grow, keep listening. Hello, and welcome to the show. We are at the end of February 2025 already, and we're about to move into March, which is International Women's Month. So in today's episode, I'm going to be focusing on women in leadership and how we can become more unapologetic about our unique feminine traits and use them to our advantage in the work that we do. I believe that the key to being a more powerful, confident, and effective leader isn't just about pushing harder, working longer hours, or trying to lead the way that men do, but instead embrace the way that you naturally operate. Women in leadership bring something unique to the table, whether it's our ability to build strong, connected teams, or strategic intuition, or the way that we can lead with empathy. But too often, we can feel the pressure to conform to traditional leadership models that weren't necessarily designed by us or for us, and are often rooted in assertiveness, competitiveness, independence, and rational thinking, which all have their place and can all be helpful. But today I want us to unpack what sets us apart as women leaders, and also talk about some of the challenges that we face and how understanding our own rhythms and approaches can be a game changer in the way that we show up, lead, and succeed in the world of work. So in this episode, we're going to look at why women's leadership strengths are often overlooked but essential for business success, how cycle syncing can help you maximize your energy, focus, and influence in leadership, and also just touch on the practical steps that you can use to lead with more ease and alignment and impact. So if you're tired of feeling like you're trying to lead in a way that doesn't feel So if you're tired of feeling like the way that you're approaching leadership doesn't feel natural or sustainable, then lean in. This episode is absolutely for you. We all know that men and women often approach projects and tasks and initiatives differently, with a different lens, with a different way of problem solving, with a different approach. I've personally noticed this a lot more as I've been forced to take a step back during my Achilles tendon recovery journey. I have to stay seated a lot of the time. So my husband's having to do way more than he would normally have to do. A lot of the tasks that I'm normally in charge of, he is now doing. And it's just interesting to observe and see the differences in approach, even the basic, simple things like how we approach cooking dinner or homework with the kids or planning certain things. It's just a different approach. And I'm not saying that my approach is necessarily what is better, but it's just different. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that there is a time and place for the masculine energy and the masculine approach to things to be used, because it is effective in certain circumstances. But there's also a time and place for the feminine approach to be celebrated and to be leaned on, because sometimes there are certain skill sets and approaches that can get the job done differently and sometimes quicker if they were fully embraced and adopted. So when we think about some of the unique strengths that women have that can be leveraged to create impact, here are some that come to mind for me. So empathy I see as a superpower. Women tend to lead with high emotional intelligence, which can foster trust and deeper connection in teams. And there's research that shows that leaders who display empathy create a stronger workplace culture and higher engagement. When people feel seen and heard, they often respond positively, right? Instead of suppressing this strength and not allowing it to come forward, we need to really embrace it and use it to create thriving people first organizations, particularly in this day and age where that feeling of belonging and connectivity is even more essential and important. We're in an environment where lots of teams are still working remote or working hybrid. And so having the ability to be in a culture and a space where you feel the empathy because people go above and beyond to demonstrate it is really important. The other thing is really focusing on transformation. So women are often more likely to focus on mentorship, empowerment, and long-term growth of their teams. They look to invest in the development of their teams over time. And this ultimately leads to higher retention, better innovation, and a workplace culture where people feel and valued and people feel like their contribution is acknowledged. Ability and agility is another one. Women are natural problem solvers. We can adjust quickly, think on our feet, and find creative solutions, often when balancing multiple responsibilities at once. If you are a mother, you will know how many times you've been in a situation with your kids where you had to think very quickly. Like we've had a massive meltdown in the middle of a supermarket, or you've had one of your children wet themselves in the middle of the street and you're like, okay, what are we going to do here? Or you've had two siblings literally getting into a massive argument when you are trying to get somewhere. Like there's so many circumstances where things happen unexpectedly that you just have to literally think on your feet and say, what am I going to do? How are we going to fix this? In today's fast changing business world, these skills are so helpful. If you're able to think on your feet and adapt and bring together solutions, you're winning in this season. And the other thing that I think women are really good at is collaboration over competition. Women naturally build relationships and foster collaboration instead of relying on being the best and that kind of like hierarchical, I'm at the top and you're not. The ability to see that other people have a skill set or they have something to contribute alongside what you contribute means that you can build bridges across departments, across industries and networks in a way that allows you to influence and get what you want or get what is needed easier because you're leveraging the power of relationships. So as I list out those things, I want you to be thinking about how often do you allow some of these traits to come forward. And beyond these traits, which are quite generalized in terms of how women show up, I want you to be thinking about what specific skill sets do you have? What are the things that people say you're really good at? And what are you doing to bring those to the forefront? What are you doing to leverage those in your day-to-day work? Because often we can have skills and we can have strengths that we may use in our personal lives, we may use in our volunteer work, we may use in certain settings, but we're not leveraging them in the workplace because perhaps it isn't the way that things have been done in the past, or you're not sure how they'll be received. But I want you to take a moment to consider what is the impact you're trying to make, and is there a way for you to make that impact easier because you're leaning into the strengths that you have. Now, I've listed all those things, but I don't want to overlook the fact that there are challenges and barriers for women in leadership that make leadership sometimes feel like an uphill battle, right? Like when you feel like you are trying to step into who you are as a leader and you are trying to leverage your skills, but you're being labeled as too assertive or aggressive or too collaborative or not tough enough. It can be a real balancing act to bring your skill set to the fore in an environment where people are not used to that or people want to challenge it. And so I think when we're looking at the way that we're showing up, it's important to understand the context in which you're showing up and look at how you can get more buy-in from some of the stakeholders that are in your space that are used to things being done a certain way. How can you cultivate relationships specifically with people that may challenge the way that you're showing up? So you might need to be a little bit more strategic about how you are managing the people in your space so that you can show up the way that you want to. We know that imposter syndrome and self-doubt often comes up. I mean, many of my coaching clients who are brilliant, capable women still hesitate to claim their success and step fully into their leadership roles. They may have done some incredible things in their career to date, but it's so easy for them to downplay those things and not really stand in their brilliance and own the fact that they have all of these accolades. And I think that's something that is just something that we have to work on actively to rewrite some of the stories that we tell ourselves about what we're worth and how capable we are. It isn't an overnight fix. Like, you're not just going to say to yourself, yes, I'm brilliant, and then really fully believe that going forward. You have to continually remind yourself of what you've been able to achieve and keep track of your receipts, keep track of the feedback, keep track of the wins that you've had, so that in those moments of doubt and feeling like you're not able or you're not capable, you have something to look at that is like, yes, this is evidence that I am able, capable, and I can do this. The other thing to be mindful of is that there are structural barriers, right? There are biases in hiring, in promotions, in pay. Women are often unrepresented at the highest levels. And let's be real, there are structural things still in place, right, that can prevent women from really stepping up into the level of leadership that they want to be in, whether that is because of hiring, because of promotion, politics, because of pay. We know that women are underrepresented at the highest levels of leadership. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important to have leadership development programs that are specifically tailored for women, for companies to really invest in how they can give women the support that they need so that they can step up and operate at those levels. Finding ways to navigate those challenges rather than just accept that it is what it is really what we want to continue to work towards. And the last thing that I want to mention that is a challenge that I think often gets overlooked, and that is mental load that comes with being a woman who is showing up fully in the corporate world as well as showing up fully at home. When you're expected to remember all of the birthday parties, the play dates, the school admin, the family stuff, the birthdays, there's so many things if you are a woman who's a parent. And even if you're not, even if you don't have children, there's other care and responsibilities that you might have to deal with. Like, you might have aging parents, you might have family members or friends that lean on you, that call on you. Often as women, we are the ones who think quickly, can get things done, so people lean on us to do those things. So it's important that you maintain boundaries both at work and at home and put some structures in place so that you don't burn out. Because if you burn out, you're not going to be helpful to anyone. And I have an episode on burnout, and I'll link to that in the show notes if you want to check that out, because I think it's one of the key challenges that many women face, and sometimes we don't even realize that we are experiencing burnout and we just keep going. But ultimately, if we don't look after our health, then we can't serve and show up and make the type of impact that we want to make. So looking at ways that you can delegate things out, that you can seek out help. Trust me, I know it's hard to ask for help. I have had to ask for help so much over the last 6 weeks and will continue to need to do so while I'm recovering from my injury. And it's uncomfortable and it's difficult, but what it does do is it helps you to realize that you're not the only one who can get things done. And also you give people the opportunity to show up for you. And there's something beautiful about realizing that there are people who are willing to go out of their way to help you because of relationships that you've already cultivated. If we are always the martyr, if we're always the person to get everything done, you don't create space or leave space for people to actually show up in your life for you. And it's beautiful to receive if you allow yourself to receive it. So I would encourage you to think about, how well are you delegating, or are you just taking everything on your shoulders and being like, yes, I need to do it. Now, I want to talk about a concept that I only really discovered, I want to say maybe 18 months to 2 years ago. So if you're like me and you missed the memo on this one, then I want to break down what cycle syncing is and how it can be absolutely game-changing for women in terms of the way that you show up to your work, especially when you're in a leadership position where you have autonomy over your days, how your days and your weeks are structured. So cycle syncing, if you haven't heard about it, It's where you align the work that you do, the tasks that you choose to do with your body's natural rhythms, right? So on a monthly basis, we go through a cycle. So if you are a woman who still has your period, then there are 4 phases to your cycle. And in each phase of your cycle, your hormones shift and change, and that impacts your energy, your focus, your creativity throughout the month. So if you are operating in a way where you're expecting yourself to have and operate with 100% capacity all the time, you're going to find that you are frustrated at times, that you feel stressed, you feel overworked, you feel overwhelmed, because that approach is often aligned with how a man's cycle works. So like men will operate on a 24-hour cycle, right? It's like how I feel today in the morning, I'm going to feel similar tomorrow in the morning. The hormones tend to be more steady, right? So when there are so often there's productivity guidance that is based around that kind of way of being. So you might have people say, right, you need to set yourself a habit, and every day you wake up at 5 a.m. and you do this and you do that and you do that, and you track your progress and you are consistent over time, and you do the same thing day after day after day, and within 21 days you now have a habit. All good, all good. But that doesn't take into account the fact that as a woman, your hormone levels fluctuate and impact the way that you feel and impact the way that you show up. So rather than thinking about productivity with that masculine lens, you can think about it in terms of the female cycle, which is a 28-day cycle typically, and there are different phases to it. So let me break down the different phases and then how you can leverage them to your advantage as a leader when you are managing your schedule and your tasks and the things you have to do. So phase 1 is the menstrual phase. So this is your like 1 to 5 days when you're actually on your period. And this is where rest and reflection is really powerful. So your energy is going to be at its lowest at this point in the month, but your intuition and your big picture thinking are at its highest. So this is a good time for you to really block out time for your strategic planning, to review your company goals, or make important business decisions. Then you move into your follicular phase, and apologies if I'm not pronouncing these correctly, which is kind of day 6 to 14 of your cycle. This is where growth and creativity kicks in. Your energy starts to rise. This makes a great time for brainstorming and problem solving. And this is where you want to be planning your major projects to kick off, or for innovation sessions, or if you do content creation. And then phase 3 is your ovulatory phase. This is when you're ovulating, day 15 to 17 typically. So this is your peak energy phase throughout the month. This is where your confidence and your communication skills are at their highest. This is when you'll probably got a bit of a boost and you're like, hi everyone, I'm here. Well, that's at least me. I'm like, hi, during that phase. And this is where you want to schedule high stakes meetings, proposal meetings, meetings with important clients. This is where you want to do negotiations or presentations or speaking engagements or networking events where your energy is high and your presence is felt. Like people are like, oh, there's something about you. It's that energy that you're just going to exude because you're in that phase of your cycle. And then after the ovulation phase, you then move into your luteal phase. So this is where you're around day 18 to 28, the last 10 days or so of your cycle. This is where focus and completion should be priority. So you may feel the need to work more internally. So on internal projects and focusing on detail and execution rather than being out there networking and liaising with other people. So this is where it's good for you to wrap up projects, organize your workflows, finalize key decisions before your next cycle begins. So if you've not heard of this before, I'd love for you to drop me a line and let me know how this sounds to you, because when I first came across this, I was like, mind blown. Why have I never been told about this? How come I've been having my period since I was 12 years old, and it's only now that I realize there's so much more to the cycle and how it impacts your body that I never really thought about. And so yeah. So I'd like to hear from you. Is this new to you, or is this old news? Because when I heard it, I was like, huh? So I'd love to hear from you. Is this new for you? And have you used cycle syncing before to align it with the work that you do? When we can align our leadership with these natural rhythms, we can work more efficiently, make better decisions, and avoid getting overly stressed, right? So instead of just taking out your calendar and looking for white space when someone asks you to schedule a meeting or an event, you can now really consider, how am I going to feel energetically, and how are my hormones going to be? What stage of my cycle am I going to be at, so that you can do your best to allow your scheduling to align with how you're naturally going to show up. In order to track my cycle, I use an app. I use an app called Natural Cycles to track my cycles, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you want to give it a try. There are others out there that are equally effective. But now, when I am thinking about events coming up and I'm planning for my quarter, I'm planning ahead, I refer to my Natural Cycles app, and I'm like, okay, when am I going to be in my ovulation phase? When am I going to be on my period? Like, I can use that to my advantage when I'm thinking about what it is I want to do and how I can show up my best for the tasks that are required of me. So when I need to perform, I know that I'm going to schedule things during my ovulation phase. And it's made a huge difference to how I lead in my business, and also how I give myself grace and give myself support when I need it. So when I know that it's that time of the month and I can feel myself, my hormones are raging and I'm feeling a bit stressed or whatever, I lean into that, and I know that, okay, maybe I need to get some earlier nights, or I need to eat some food with more nutrition, or I need to call in more support because I'm going through that phase of the month. So how can you start applying all of what we shared to your leadership journey? Here's some practical tips that I want you to take away. So firstly, stop trying to fit into a leadership mold that wasn't designed for you. So really think about your natural leadership style being an asset. So your style in terms of you being a woman and maybe approaching things differently because of that, and also your style because of your specific personal strengths. Then I want you to think about how you can acknowledge and overcome some of the typical barriers to success for women. So number one, identify your own leadership strengths. Stop trying to fit into a leadership mold that wasn't designed for you or that isn't serving you. How can your natural leadership strengths come to the fore? How can you lean into some of the typical strengths that you probably have as a woman to help you to make more impact where you are? Number two, consider and acknowledge those barriers to success and think about what are some ways that you can mitigate those in the work that you do. And then number three, you want to track your cycle and align it with your work. Start tracking your cycle and noticing when you have peak energy, focus, or creativity. And you may be listening to this and be saying, well, Janine, I'm at that time where I'm going through the menopause and my cycle is erratic and it's all over the place. That's fine. You might not use an app like cycle syncing, but you may still want to track your mood and track over like a month period or 2 months or a quarter how your mood has shifted and changed. And then you can gradually align your major leadership activities with the periods where you're noticing patterns. And then you can make a more informed decision about when you do things and how you do things based on what is going on for you in this season in terms of your hormonal changes. The last thing we want to think about doing is setting boundaries and working smarter, not harder. Really thinking about what boundaries have I put in place, both personally and professionally, that are going to serve and support me in being able to show up the way that I want to show up and I need to show up as a leader. So those are the things I want you to think about off the back of today's episode. If you have found this useful, please do send me a DM on LinkedIn or over on Instagram, because I love hearing from you. And I'm super excited about our next episode. So next week, we're doing something a little bit different. We are hosting a roundtable discussion with different leaders from different backgrounds and organizations. And we're going to talk about intergenerational workplaces and what we can be doing to help women at different stages in their careers and from different generations to advance in our dynamic workplaces. And it's going to be awesome. I've not done a roundtable discussion like this before on the podcast, so it's something new, and I'm looking forward to sharing the insights with you. So make sure that you are subscribed to the show and that you come back next week and tune in to that episode. If you know a woman in leadership who needs to hear this episode, share it with her and let's keep the conversation going. So until next time, lead with confidence, lead with authenticity, and most importantly, lead in a way that works for you. Keep moving towards your career goals, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next episode. Bye.